No one expected Bloodlines 2 to match the numbers of Baldur's Gate 3, but last week we found out just how poorly this game sold. Steam sales estimates are around 121,000 units, which is somewhere around 4 million in net sales. Now, they certainly sold on other platforms, and we don't know what those numbers are, but there's no reason to believe they are anything other than poor, and it's not going to get any better. As of recording this video, there are 259 people playing on Steam, with a 24-hour max of 495. And to make matters worse, the all-time high was 27,020. Needless to say, this has not given Paradox Interactive a giant boost in cash. The company's CEO, Frederick Wester, says that Paradox takes full responsibility for the poor performance. He acknowledged that this game was outside of their core and that going forward, they would be focusing their capital on their strengths. And while he did praise the strength of the World of Darkness catalog, his words sound a tad ominous. Quote, "We'll evaluate how we develop the World of Darkness's strong brand catalog in the future." End quote. You have to wonder if that evaluate means get rid of, put on hold, or pare down. If you remember, earlier this year, they relaunched White Wolf, stating how they were going to do lots of in-house game development, really push this catalog. Now that rosy future might not be quite so rosy, especially since Wester said the nature of these games made it difficult for them to judge sales. I'm pretty sure that means they're not going to expect a whole lot out of these products. However, he did say they were going to continue their development on the 2 DLCs they have already had people pay for that are coming out in 2026, as well as continuing to support the game, though he didn't indicate just how strong that support would be. On the presser, November 27th, Paradox stated that they did a $37 million write-down on development costs for Bloodlines 2. The company's annual revenue from 2024 was somewhere around $202 million. The 2025 statements aren't released yet. So what does this write-down mean? And what does it actually do to their financial future? Well, when you look at a company's financials, their profit and loss statement, their income statement, their balance sheet, you can get a pretty good indication of how that company is operating. The P&L, or profit and loss, shows a company's revenue, costs, expenses over a given period of time, say a quarter. The balance sheet shows a snapshot of current assets, liabilities, things like that. Income statements shows, well, what you're getting for income. A write-off, as we're all pretty familiar with that term, is when some asset the company has no longer has any value. Say you bought 100 laptops 5 years ago, they have a certain value to your company. After a while, that value depreciates. Once it hits zero, either through depreciation or maybe there's just actual physical loss, and that value hits zero, it's written off. It no longer shows up on your financial statements. It's as if it no longer exists. And write-offs are generally one-time occurrences. And they're pretty normal expected things to happen in any company, even when it comes to software development. In fact, last year, Paradox Interactive wrote off about $170 million in developer costs, which could be anything from they're no longer developing on a game, they're no longer paying a developer, and whatever the value of what they were getting is now zero, it's totally gone. A write-down is something a little different. As things age, no matter what it is in a company, there is depreciation, and those get journal entries for depreciation. However, the write-down is generally a bit more dramatic, say a market shift or poor sales, causing a significant drop in the valuation of that item. And if it's significant enough, say 37 million, it's going to show up on your financial statements, especially your balance sheet and your income statement. And this drops the value of your company. And in turn, it makes it harder to get loans, lines of credit, and as Paradox is a publicly traded company, it affects their stock prices. Oh, and that write-down stays on the books year over year until you end up having to do a write-off. Mind you, that write-down can be flipped if that item increases in value, though I don't think that's happening anytime soon with Bloodlines. Which then leads us back to what kind of an impact will this have on their White Wolf development plans? And it most assuredly will affect what types of RPGs, if they do those again, they will do. Not that they weren't warned by the Chinese room, who, if you're to believe them, repeatedly said the original Bloodlines game wasn't the type of game they developed, they didn't do open worlds, and that they could probably do a game like Dishonored. Though I think they were giving themselves a whole lot more credit than they really deserve, but they went ahead and they took the contract and did what they could. I think this was also reflected in the absolute massive lack of enthusiasm in nearly every interview they showed toward this game. Someone at the Chinese Chinese room knew this was a bad idea, but sometimes that's just how business rolls. Bad ideas just can't get shut down. And of course, we don't know the real impact of the Sumo Group on TRC taking this contract. Still, it doesn't look good for World of Darkness or future Bloodlines games. So what do you folks think? See a future in these? Or as dead as the vampires we're playing? And hey, if you're enjoying this content, give us a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.